King Ahasuerus's Greek name was Xerxes, his Persian name was Xerxes. Xerxes, also known as Xerxes the Great, the son of Darius the Great, ruled 486 to 465 BC. He is the Xerxes who invaded Greece, was stopped temporarily at Thermopylae, defeated at the naval battle at Salamis, and nearly annihilated at Plataea, 479. It was in the days of Ahasuerus, who reigned from India to Ethiopia, Kush, over 127 provinces, in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne, which was at the citadel in Susa, the capital of the Persian Empire. In the 3rd year of his reign he held a banquet for all his officials and his attendants. The army officers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the officials of the provinces were there in his presence. And he displayed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his great majesty for many days, 180 days in all. On the 7th day, when the king's heart was joyful with wine, in high spirits, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbonah, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus as his attendants, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, high turban, to display her beauty before the people and the officials, for she was lovely to see. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, which was delivered to her by the eunuchs. So the king became extremely angry and burned with rage. And because Queen Vashti had refused to come when called by the king, had conferred with the 7 eunuchs, and agreed with their advice to that Vashti is no longer to come before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better and more worthy than she. So when the king's great decree is proclaimed throughout his extensive kingdom, all women will give honor to their husbands, from the great to the insignificant. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus, Xerxes, had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's attendants, who served him, said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen in place of Vashti." This pleased the king, and he did accordingly. There was a certain Jew in the citadel of Susa whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been deported from Jerusalem with the captives who had been exiled with Jeconiah king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had exiled. He was the guardian of Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. The young woman was beautiful of form and face, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her in as his own daughter. So Esther was taken to the king's palace and placed in the custody of Hegai, who was in charge of the women. She had kept silent that she was of a Jewish background, as advised by Mordecai. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus, to his royal palace in the 10th month, that is, the month of Tevath, Decjan, in the 7th year of his reign. Now the king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she found favor and kindness with him more than all the other virgins, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen in the place of Vashti. Then the king held a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his officials and his servants, and he made a festival for the provinces and gave gifts in accordance with the resources of the king. While Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, 2 of the king's eunuchs who guarded the door, became angry and conspired to attack King Ahasuerus. But the plot became known to Mordecai, who informed Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. Now when the plot was investigated and found to be true, both men were hanged on the gallows. And it was recorded in the book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman son of Hamdatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Haman speaks king to Xerxes saying that the Jews among them refuse to follow the king's orders. Haman asks for the king's decree to destroy the Jews, and the king allows it. The decree was made known to every province and made known to the people of every nationality so they would be ready for that day. Queen Esther hears about what had happened to Mordecai, and he had asked Esther go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Esther approaches the king, then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given you." "If it pleases the king," replied Esther, "let the king, together with Haman, come today to a banquet I have prepared for him." "Bring Haman at once," the king said, "so that we may do what Esther asks." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. As they were drinking wine, the king again asked Esther, "Now what is your petition?" "It will be given you." "And what is your request?" "Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Esther replied, "My petition and my request is this: if the king regards me with favor and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question." Haman went out that day happy and in high spirits. But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against Mordecai. Haman restrained himself and went home. His wife and friends said to him to ask the king to have Mordecai impaled in a long pole. That night the king had thought about honor and recognition as Mordecai, for exposing Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. The king asked Haman, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman, assuming that the king must have been thinking of honoring him, said, "For the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe the king has worn and a horse the king has ridden, one with the royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" The king ordered Haman to do as he has suggested for Mordecai. Haman's head was covered in grief about this. The eunuchs then took Haman to the banquet Esther had prepared. The king again asked Queen Esther, "What is your petition?" "It will be given you." "What is your request?" "Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Queen Esther told the king about Haman's plan to kill all the Jews. The king got angry, said, "Impale him on it." So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Esther is given Haman's property, and Mordecai assumes Haman's place. Esther begs the king to save the Jews. The decree is irrevocable once ratified by the king, but a counter-decree is issued allowing the Jews to protect themselves on the day they were scheduled for annihilation. When the Jews hear the news, they rejoice. Many in the land become Jews, because fear of the Jews fell on them. Jews defend themselves, killing 75,000 enemies. Mordecai is a very prominent citizen. At Esther's request, Haman's 10 sons are hung. Jews celebrate victory, and Purim is declared an annual festival for all Jews. Purim is derived from pur, meaning lots, and refers to the lottery that Haman used to choose the date for the massacre. Ahasuerus' empire is strong. Mordecai is a popular and powerful ruler under Ahasuerus, and his story is recorded in official records.